Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Cindy Freeman, and welcome to the Story Studio's presentation of how to make stories come to life in your stories with Julia Whitehouse. Very excited to be presenting this 30-minute webinar. Julia is going to be leading it. I'll be somewhere in the background, so you will see me later, but I'm really pleased to just introduce a truly masterful storyteller. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Julia Whitehouse.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you so much to Cindy for the wonderful introduction. And I'm going to assume already that your character is one of dedication to the art of storytelling, whether you're doing it for performance, personal growth, or business, or just to be able to do it at the dinner table or over Zoom with your family. Whatever your purpose is, your character is one of dedication and commitment, because this is a free workshop in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday. You could have very well just like blown it off, right? But you didn't, and you're here. And so for that, I thank you and I'm grateful for it. You're all brilliant characters in my book. That being said, I want to give you a bit of a rundown of how today or this next 30 minutes is going to work. First, I'm going to tell you some of my favorite characters to describe in my stories, and then I'm going to give you a couple of exercises that might be helpful in your development of your characters in your stories. And then I'm going to give you a couple things to keep in mind when you are developing these characters and your stories just in general. And fourthly, we are going to have a question and answer section, but I want to be a little bit more focused for that section. If you have a question, great, that's fantastic, put it in the chat. But also I want to challenge you, if there's a character description that you've been working on or one that you think of through the time that we are here together, and you're like, I don't know if it's working, or I don't know if it's enough, or is there a simpler way to put this? I want to challenge you to put your description of a character in, and I'm going to tell you what I hear, and then you can go from there, whether or not it's something that how to work on it from there. We can discuss it. Does that sound like a good 30 minutes of time? I think so. So let's get started. Yes, yes. So first of all, characters that I love to describe in my stories. Number one, the thing that I want to tell you guys, like the overarching, if you get nothing from the next 30 minutes, if you get nothing from it, please just take this. And it's good right up front in case you gotta go. Please remember that stats, data, description of somebody mean nothing without an emotional element, mean nothing without how you feel in relation to the description of this character inside your story. And to that end, let me describe my friend Lisa. I have a story about giving up sugar for Lent, and then meeting a fellow named Henry Sugar. And the way that I met him was in a club, and I went to this club with my beautiful friend Lisa, and I always referred to her as my beautiful friend Lisa, and how we got along so well because she was just as beautiful as I was strange and kooky and weird and like to make people laugh and pull my face, and she was like a little bit of that, and just as I was a little bit beautiful. And so we kind of matched. She was a lot beautiful and a little weird, and I was a little weird. I was a lot weird and a little beautiful. So we were just peas in a pod. And she was the best person to go out with because she knew all the doormen, all the bouncers, and all the bartenders, and all the DJs. So we always got in for free and cut the line, and always got free drinks, and always had a place to put our purses and or jackets. So like you understand from that the level of beauty that we're talking about from my beautiful friend Lisa. Why I describe her that way is because like to illustrate the kind of beauty that she was. It was kind of universal. But also, I like to say that she made me feel very special. There was no other friend that I had that to go out with her, all of these things would happen. I felt more beautiful being around Lisa. So that's Lisa. That's a way to describe somebody using how other people react around them, but then also checking in and saying like, oh, this is how they made me feel. Other people felt this way, and also I felt this way. Yes? My other favorite person to describe is a story that I've been developing recently, a character I call Pat Delangelo, for a story that takes place in high school. She was a very broad-shouldered swimmer, a full woman who would take up the space of my doorway as she burst into my dorm room and would demand food, and I would cower in her presence. I barely had any sort of breast action. I wore like a sports bra almost like as a joke, just because I was doing sport, not because I had anything to hold down. And she made me so nervous, and any food that I had, when she demanded it, I would give it to her as though she were a giant, and here's my peace offering. That is my description of Pat Delangelo. So that is solely how Pat made me feel in her presence, in addition to some descriptor of how she looked, and but directly how she made me feel, and also how I looked in relation to her versus me. That's a simple trick. When you describe somebody, that's good and all, but like, what do you look like in relation to them? And what are the feelings in between? That's a good place and a quick, easy way to describe a situation or between two people. Because not only are you describing them, you're also describing the relationship. Yes? That is, those are just a couple descriptions, and I'll refer back to them throughout, perhaps, and that those are the kind of descriptions that I like to tell. Those are my favorite. But also, I should note also, Lisa, I do not protect her identity. She knows that I tell this story, and she is still my friend. So, and referring to her as my beautiful friend Lisa, she does not have a problem with. Pat Delangelo, that is a fake name. Oftentimes, we are, it's good to protect people's identities in our stories if you think that they won't necessarily like being in a story of yours, or this particular story, I don't come out in a bad light. I come out in a bad light, and Pat Delangelo comes out in a bad light. So it's sort of like, you know, it's half and half. Either way, I'm not friends with Pat Delangelo, so that's why I call her Pat Delangelo. So next part, how do we do this? How do we do this is specifically? Before I launch into this section of the workshop, I want to warn you guys that when I say that quick, easy, fast, I mean that that is something that you will eventually get to. When we're developing our stories or the descriptions of our characters, we have to do a lot of work before we get to that point. So when you are workshopping your stories, know that you have to go overboard before you find any sort of succinct way to put something. So just know that going in, that you have a lot of work ahead of you, and that's a-okay. And it's a lot of fun to describe people and like describe all of their attributes, all their stats and all their data, and then write out how it makes you feel, because you're developing your stories. This isn't necessarily just one story. You may very well be able to get a few stories out of this person or this situation. And it's always useful to practice that muscle of description and connecting to your emotional life with those descriptions. So first of all, I would say a fun exercise to use when you're thinking about a character is ask yourself, if this person were a song, what song would they be? If this person were an animal, or a political figure, or a Sex and the City character, or what actor would play them in a movie, just all of those or a flavor. What if this person was a meal? Like, what sort of meal would they be? Like, what are some fun ways to describe this person in like relation to nothing, like cement, just like sort of idea, like if just let your imagination go. And also another way to remember how somebody makes you feel, an easy way to do that is to recall the conversations that you have with this person and to write them out as though they are scripts. You're not necessarily going to use these in your story. Maybe you're only going to pull one phrase, but to like write out the whole conversation will put you back into that headspace, and that sort of emotional quotient will just spill forth, and you'll be able to remember certain things that you wouldn't have necessarily been able to remember. And also, for instance, I have a story about a Sex and the City party that I threw with my sister a long time ago when I was very sad and trying to be very happy. And at this particular party, I posed a question, an idea that I'd started working on. I was like, what if there is nobody? I was working on this idea. I was like, possibly this is a possibility. What if there is nobody for me? What if I am alone for the rest of my life? And I posed this question to the group of gals that were at this party, and it had been this raucous discussion. And I was like, what if there is nobody? And my friend Kat raises her finger, looks directly at me as though we were in a board meeting, and says, not an option. You get immediately what kind of character my friend Kat was. Like, just, she was going to find love no matter what, from hell or high water. She's also like my friend that when you want an opinion, you call Kat. If you don't know, you call Kat. Anyway, so that's like a couple ways to develop your characters when you're thinking about the character specifically. The another big thing to remember as you are working on your stories is that what you say about other people says more about you than it does about the other person. And you're the person that we are sharing time with. So I want to know how you feel, how you relate to the circumstances and this person. That is the most important thing. So remember that the most important character in your stories is you. It's you. So ways to exercises to develop that part of your story is to make a list of, I am the kind of person who XYZ. I am the kind of person who, for instance, when I went out with my friend Lisa and we met up with her beautiful friends, I would always drink too much. I'm the kind of person who drinks too much when they're nervous, and beautiful people make me nervous. That's the kind of person that I am. Also, I'm the kind of person that always defers to the larger personality in a room, as exemplified by the Pat Delangelo character. And this is true to this day. Like, you see all this energy, you see all this excitement. I will still, if there was a bigger personality coming into this room, I would defer to them. That is how I do. That's the kind of person that I am. Think about the kind of person that you are, and also think about the way that other people have described you. That's a fun place. Don't we always remember how other people describe us, especially when it's not very nice? So think about that. My favorite way to describe myself is something that a gym teacher said to me, a male gym teacher said to me when I was 12 years old, because it actually kind of works. It's awful, but he said to me, hey, Julia, has anyone ever told you that you look like a bloody Q-tip? Now, be that as it may, like, the wrong thing to say to a 12-year-old, but you get a perfect image of what little Julia looked like at 12 years old. Real skinny, real white, with red hair on top. Another way that I like to describe myself is to think about the way that I used to behave when people would say nasty things to me. Nasty, like when people would call me a carrot top. I thought I was so witty. I would come back at them with carrot tops are green. And don't you get sort of a full picture in just that phrase? What kind of little girl, little Julia was, thinking I was so witty and funny, and having a real quick retort about carrot tops being green. Uh, so those are the things to remember. Let me just check on my notes. Yeah, so that's it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you are the main character, and everything that you say about somebody else is reflective mostly on who the speaker is. Right, right, right. So thirdly, what are the things that you want to remember while you're working on your stories? What are the things that are the just to keep in mind? Number one, I say, do the dialogue, do the phrases. I love hearing conversation of back and forth in the middle of the story. I think that's a lot of fun to perform and also to watch being performed. I think it's my favorite. I come from a theater background, but don't do the accents. Do the dialogue, don't do the accents. Your Southern accent is not as good as you think that it is. And it's just unnecessary. It pulls us out. It gets very performy. This is a true story. Just relate what you remember being said. We don't need to get the accent necessarily. If it's a funny phrasing, sure, put that in. But the accent is not necessarily useful. It will take people out of the story more often than not. If it's a family member, sure, go ahead. If it's the way that you used to speak because you're from that area and you no longer have that accent, I guess that's a safe bet. But I think more often than not, we don't need to do the accent. uh, that's just a note for me, for myself. As I said, I have that theater background and I want to, but it usually doesn't serve the story. Again, things that serve the story. As you develop your story, you'll realize what is the fact that can be cut away from your description of your character. So always come back to, does it serve the story? What is the thing that I am trying to say? And another thing to keep in mind is to be mindful of your description of race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, body type, culture, any of that. Don't be sensitive to the point of censorship, but remember this: always punch up, don't punch down. That's what they say in comedy. For people that are more troubled than you or different than you in any way, you don't necessarily need to, no, strike that beginning of that sentence. You need to be mindful because you need to be kind. You need to be kind to the memory of yourself, and you need to be kind to the memory of your characters, because your characters, they gave you the story, and yourself, you're still here. You survived whatever the circumstance is that you are talking about. I used to refer to myself as a slut. I don't do that anymore. I call myself an optimist now, because who does that word serve? That is hurting me to recall that, and it doesn't make me feel good. And it doesn't also serve the story. It's a nasty word. So for instance, some people in New York especially, we've got a lot of people that tell homeless people stories. Let's remember, unless you're running a shelter or you are passing out $100 bills on the regular, the kindest thing that you can do for a homeless person is be kind to them in your story. Honesty, the best way to be honest in your story is to be empathetic. And simply put, the road to honesty is empathy. That's all you have to remember at the end of the day when you are thinking about people in your stories, describing them. And hey, sometimes maybe your rough draft is going to have some like hateful language in it, and maybe you need to work that out, but not in front of people. That's what the time alone is for, as you work things out. But also, I want to note, you're going to make mistakes. Your girl Julia has made so many of the mistakes, and I plan on making more, because I plan on attempting. You have to be able to listen when you find out that you've made a mistake. And that's the thing to remember as well. Some mistakes that I've made, a risk story, that my first ever risk story was about a friend of mine, Patrick. It's about my dead tooth. He accidentally pushed me down. I broke my front tooth. I used to describe him as dumb. And at one point in the story, I referred to him as fatter than he used to be, and looked like he followed the impulse to drink. But didn't we all follow the impulse to drink in our late 20s? Are these things necessary descriptors of him necessarily? No. And he wasn't dumb. Why did I do that back then? I made a mistake. So that being said, I believe that is all that I have to throw at you. Do you guys have questions? Do you guys have characters that you want to suggest to me, or suggest or describe to me, and I can tell you what I hear?
This
Yeah.
is, they do have questions. They've been writing them in. So I'm going to join so I am no longer a disembodied voice.
Right, that would be awesome.
I am going to read you some of the questions that popped up. Lot of praise, by the way, from me as well. There's just so many wonderful things that you have brought up that I'd never quite thought that way. So nicely done. Reading along. Hold on, just scrolling down. I want to make sure I don't miss anything.
Ultimately, on the note of like making mistakes, when we listen, we are becoming better storytellers. It helps us to become a better storyteller, and ultimately a better human. You know, some people are here for personal growth and some for business, and like, you're going to become a better human regardless when you are able to listen to how people hear your story. You cannot control what people take from your story, but you can tell with love.
Cool.
So.
All right, so here's one of the questions. This is from Claire. So you don't say this guy's a putz, but describe in a way that conveys that attitude?
Exactly. Like, what did he say? How did that make you feel? Like, you can say, I've known a lot of putzes in my life because blah, blah, blah. And this guy, he fit the bill. This is another, and that actually, thank you so much for this note about a specific word. A couple words to never say never, right? But two words that I try to stay away from unless I am getting more descriptive with them: crazy and interesting. It serves me not at all. When you say crazy and just leave it at that, that gives me no information. When you say interesting, that gives me no information, save for you are holding something back. What else? What kind of crazy? There are too many kinds of crazy, and also it is such a loaded word. Like, if you're going to be sensitive to people with mental health issues, crazy and just left on the floor just like that, it does nothing. That does nothing to describe. I can give you an example of that. I was once made so crazy, so insane by a roommate who moved my bathroom supplies in and out of the bathroom. We had a fight over the course of a week. He wanted to keep the bathroom clean, and I wanted to keep my bathroom stuff in the bathroom. And I came back from moving my sister, like a whole day-long trip to Philly, and I was exhausted, and we got into such a screaming match, and I was pushed to such an edge that I yelled at him, "Now I know why your wife left you." Does that give you more of a description of the kind of crazy that I'm talking about? Yes. You can't just say crazy. Like, that roommate made me crazy. Who cares?
Good point.
Yeah.
Next up, Sherry says, I'm writing a story about a 20-year-old friend and business associate who just died. I'm putting in about the good and bad of our relationship, but I'm finding it challenging mainly because she died. Any suggestions?
To focus on the good,
Mhm.
you know, uh, is this, I mean, what is it for? Is it for a business setting or
Sherry,
uh,
feel free to put something in the chat on that.
is this Sherry Rosen?
Yeah.
Mm,
Oh, I see
oh,
a new comment. Maybe that's her. Honoring her. It's a story honoring her.
okay. Well, I would just, again, I would tell with love, and if there, you said there are bad parts of the relationship, uh, yeah, you know what, can you give me a suggestion of one of the things, like one of the descriptions that you feel is a little iffy? If you feel, you can message me separately, Sherry. You're a friend of Happy Hour Story Hour. You can do that anytime.
I'm also thinking that, what if you think on this, that there's scenic detail versus overview. So if put the wonderful things, almost like a close up where we can see and hear that time this person did X and it made me feel so forth. Granted, they had some bad habits, making them up, they were always late, but, and then,
Yeah,
so it's that you nod to, yeah, they were human, but aren't we all? But you
yeah.
press, you know.
That's a great suggestion. My husband always calls that a compliment sandwich.
Mm.
Right? So good, bad, good. Always bookend them with with like a good thing, and then you can mention. And Sherry answered like she didn't care for herself. She didn't like take care of herself. I'm guessing, and that's, maybe she didn't go to the doctor enough, and that's, what, that's sometimes a hard thing to hear, but sometimes people need to hear it. But
Mhm.
again, bookend with love. And
Bookend
good.
love, very much so. Um, let's see. Um, is it more important to give an audience an image of characters' appearance or traits? So is
So
it appearance or traits, which is more important?
right? It depends on the story, right? I think my two descriptors, they had both the appearance and their traits. If you can give like she had broad shoulders, like a swimmer, and was like a full woman, and she was intimidating, filling up a door space, and she barked like, "Give me your food!" Like this was her behavior. These were her traits, like and her descriptors, feature descriptors. Um, I think like marrying all of them.
Mhm.
I When I listen to somebody's story uh, and hear them just give me a breakdown of what they look like, that and then they don't say how that makes them feel. Like I would tell you what the most important thing, whether you're using physical descriptors or their behavior, is how it makes you feel.
Mm. Yeah, awesome. Got one here, and I think I'm pronouncing this right. Srilatha.
Yeah.
Thank you. When I hear accents, especially people performing Indian accents, I just start resisting everything they are saying.
Yeah.
So I felt the importance of reading that because I agree. It takes us out. So thanks for that comment. And I think that might be it. Claire writes, Byron fancied himself as a macho woodsman going for the Grizzly Adams thing, beard, flannel shirt. I like that. So well done. Good example.
I love that. I love that. How did that make you feel though? Like I would just add, like, did you like it? Or was it just, or is that something that was like, just you were adverse to a woodsman type? Or was it like, I've never dated a woodsman before, or I don't know who Byron is in relation to you, but like, just that would be the next part of the descriptor is
And
your
it,
relation to it, how it makes you feel, what are the emotions come up when you see a flannel shirt.
um, Srilantha also asks, and if I'm mispronouncing your name, please let me know. Or they are saying, self-depreciation sometimes is my downfall. How to strike a balance so that it is vivid but not pitiful.
Yes, I hear again, it all comes back to yes, you want to make people laugh. Yes, but I would say attempt, like, practice going in the opposite direction, like full tilt, like just talk about yourself with all of the confidence in the world. Uh, in a storytelling stage, I feel as though that's like there's like there's a little bit more leeway for that. And in stand-up, I know, Srilata, you do more a lot of storytelling and a lot of stand-up. So in stand-up, I feel as though a confident person is that's a little like, I used to refer to myself when I did stand-up as pretty, and I would have multiple comments be like, oh, don't do that. And I'm like, that's, but what if you described yourself as with all the confidence and in the world, and then you would find that balance. Like, just go overboard confidence wise as you're working on your story. Like, I'm an expert in this, I am the best XYZ, so forth, so on, so on. Because ultimately also, like, I want to hear somebody who believes that they are the best person to tell this story. I want to believe that they are. So when you step forth and you have that confidence, that you're doing a service to yourself and to your audience. It's more fun to watch.
Very good points there. And I think that's pretty much it. Sherry, with Lisa, your beautiful friend, did you actually describe her looks? Because I don't recall.
No, I didn't. Did I? Is it necessary for you to know? All I do is say that she's beautiful. What's the most important part? She gets us into bars. She gets free drinks. We have a place to stash our purses. Like, what she looks like, you can, like, that gives it to you to be able to, like, come up with your own, like, what's a beautiful, universal, beautiful person. Ultimately, she is a secondary character in the story. So she doesn't even, like, it needs to happen quickly. I just need to get to the bar. So where I meet Henry Sugar. So I don't need to go into it fully, like the breakdown of what her face and her hair looks like.
Awesome. I'm looking at the time, and I certainly have a time to go a little longer if you do, but I'm thinking some people might be on the middle of a lunch break. So I'm just going to throw some things here for you to read quickly before we go away. Coming up next, we've got a 90-minute storytelling for business masterclass with myself. There's a link there to enroll. This is done with First Person Arts Anthology Festival. And then the next workshop up is yours, Julia. It is a 2-day live online group storytelling on personal growth, storytelling for personal growth. There is a coupon there, Learn Online, if you want 15% off. A link to enroll is there, but you can also just go to our website, which is thestorystudio.org. And if you have any questions, you can always email me. So this is our official end, but we still have about 4 or 5 questions. So if anybody wants to stick on a little bit later, I think we will answer those questions if that's okay with you, Julia.
That's okay by me. The baby is still napping, and my husband hasn't come out of his office or out of the bedroom yet, but there is music starting to play. So if that is distracting, we can do a couple more questions and have to go. But Danny A says, how do you feel about using pop culture references to establish characters? And, i.e. look like Jennifer Aniston or was nerdy like Steve Urkel. I would say go for it. I think that that's a useful, like, quick, easy way to get everybody on board of the kind of person that they look like, because that's like a reference point for everybody. Not necessarily everybody in an audience, it depends. But Jennifer Aniston, I think, is a safe one, since she was on Friends for all those years and now sells us water.
Good. Kent Wimple says, I've been working on a story to describe my mother with, she would apply her fire engine red lipstick with a cigarette already in her mouth, a drink in her hand while complaining about her neighbors.
I love it. I love it. I love it. This is a multitasker. This woman is just, she's has to get things done, and they have to get done immediately, and she's got something to say, and she's gonna say it, and she's not gonna let the fact that she has to put her face on stop. I think that I get an image of this woman immediately. I'm put right in the place. I'm put also like, I feel like I'm you watching her. And I would say again, the next step is like, I love this about her, or however that made you feel as well, if that's necessary and serves the story. At some point, you will, need to say that.
Cool.
Anastasia Mora, if I may, she says, how much do you leave to the audience imagination? And I would say, try to limit that. You don't want to spend like 5 minutes describing what someone looks like. Like for instance, my friend Lisa, I'm not going to spend an inordinate amount of time describing what she looks like, just how she makes me feel. That's what the important part is. Because when you make your audience like step out and like wonder something, like then they're not listening to your story. The more specific you can get in your description, the better. So even let's go back to Danny A. What his suggested, he was like, look like Jennifer Aniston. What era Jennifer Aniston? Is it the Friends era with like the awesome haircut and kind of like attitude, or is it the water, the lotion selling Jennifer Aniston, who's like really encouraging and suggests that you drink water, which is something that as humans we should already be doing.
We have a really great question here from Tracy Starin. Do you hold back on negative descriptions if you think the person might hear the story like a family member?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna say, I mean, like that's up to you, really. But I am not about censorship. If you're telling with love, and if also like tell as though they're not going to hear. See what happens if they don't hear, because likelihood, if they're a not nice person, they're not looking you up on the internet to see your videos, right? Like, and if they hear about it and then they see it and they get upset, you're Mike Birbiglia had a great line for this. He was like, it's my show. You want to say what you want to say, you do your own show. Tell your version of the story. You do the work, and then you can tell your side. But in the meantime, if it's a negative description, always remember that like you don't want to tell from a place of revenge. You want to make sure that it serves your story. If it's something, if you've got to be nasty, turn it back on yourself as well. Remember that like, for instance, like my roommate, Tim, he was being ludicrous, trying to take bathroom stuff out of the bathroom. What he was being jealous because I was having a sexual relationship with our other roommate. He was being a really just a vicious human being. But I was also annoying and cruel. So, try to balance it with some of your own understanding at the end of the day. Always remember empathy.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
We have ended all the questions, and a lot of people are still here. So I want to say thank you so much. And I think that speaks to, man, there was so much good stuff in here. So I'm really glad that I was your stage manager, because I learned a lot of things that I can use in my classes. But again, for those of you who are still here, we're going to be continuing doing these low costs or free programs moving forward as long as the pandemic is here as a way to give back. In fact, many of these free webinars are then posted on our YouTube channel, so you can share them with your friends. We will be getting in touch with everyone who took this and sending you an email with a follow-up and a link to this video once it's up and running sometime within the week. So that's it from my end. We hope to see you again sometime soon. Julia.
Thank you very much. I feel very appreciative. And again, if anybody wants to work on any of their stories, Happy Hour Story Hour is the show that I run, the weekly storytelling open mic that happens on my Instagram at Julia W Hair. And if you want to work on any of your character descriptions or your stories and your stories, please come join us on Mondays, every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Fantastic.
See you at a workshop again soon.
Thank you all for showing up and good to see you. Have a great beginning of this year.